The season of love finds its origins in an ancient festivity called Lupercalia. The roots to this festival is seen celebrated for 1200 years. It was later modernized by the Emperor Claudius, who executed two men named Valentine on February the 14th in different years in the 3rd century, when in their martyrdom was honored by the Catholic Church with celebrations of St. Valentine's Day. These realities came about during the astronomical appearance of the star Venus, which was at its brightest on the chosen date of the 14th of February. The most well-known love stories are attributed to Aphrodite and Cupid, taken from the book The Golden Ass. What we must consider, though, is that the writers tried to formulate a story of an original androgynous being. Its nature mentioned in the Nemean 6 for Alcamendes of the Aegean boys wrestling. Words from the Chaldean Berosus mentions the existence of this androgynous being as one race of men and gods whom from a single mother drew their breath. These rewritten stories are now made into several entities. This can be seen in the story of Cupid, Aphrodite, and Psyche. The writer tries to explain a story of the true origins of the original Holy Trinity of the old goddess. This older concept, ruling all cycles of creation, birth, and death, as a virgin, mother, and crone form. This sacred order, purposely destroyed by the Christian attacks of her temples, scriptures, and her devotees. The church declared from the first that the goddess and her magnificence should be destroyed. Acts 19:27. And even though the Greeks thought the sacred letter Alpha, which meant creatress and denoted the river of birth and creation, and the other river Styx was of death. In a cycle system of the ancestor, birth and death merged in a circular continuum. The river Styx circled 7 times through the earth's womb and emerged again as Alpha. These events can be seen also in the anatomy of the body and its behavior during the cerebral spinal fluid flow, which is known as the Christ oil. This can be seen in the story of Cupid, Aphrodite, and Psyche. The story begins with a queen and a king whom had 3 lovely daughters. One in particular, by the name of Psyche, was said to be extremely beautiful. So much so that everywhere Psyche went, she was said to be admired by many. Her beauty was so overwhelming, it was likened to that of the Roman goddess Venus, known as Aphrodite. Aphrodite experiences a new psyche, or psychic, of a psychological mind, of which you will see as the story continues. According to the Greek creation story, Eros was a 3rd primordial deity born from chaos, with Gaia, the earth deity, and Tartarus, the underworld deity. He was said to embody the love in creation, which influenced Gaia to create the sky, mountain, and the oceans, after which they went on to create the deities. Eros' mother is said to be the goddess of love, Aphrodite, and his father is said to be Hermes, Zeus, and Ares, all in one. Even though Ares was mainly said to be his father, as he was born from the union of love and war in what we know as Ares the Lamb. Eros is the firstborn, called Cupid, a cherub, with power in the bow and to spread love with the golden arrow, and led to stare away. Eros was often in the company of a winged class of beings called Erotes, Eros and his brother was the most significant of them all, while the others were mentioned in poetry and paintings. In the Christ oil flow, these would make up the ascending firstborn in the wisdom of the heavens. Cupid's brother Anteros and Eros would be considered the descending rebellious generation of men, down the spine for the judgment throne. And it was said that Anteros was meant to be necessary for Cupid's existence, and was the response from the love given from Cupid as the love returned, and that must be answered in order to prosper. Anteros's appearance was quite similar to his brother Cupid, except that Anteros carried a golden club of chastisement, and he had a unique pair of wings. And just as Aphrodite, the sea nymph Beryl, was born from the chaotic sea foam gathered around Uranus' dismembered body, Psyche too was said to be born through the amniotic waters of the underworld to rise to the earth, where she was followed by Aphrodite's loyal devotees, whom began to abandon her, and only because they transformed from the water as she did. The book suggested that Aphrodite was furious and wanted to get back at her. So Aphrodite ordered her son, Cupid, to make Psyche fall in love with the most detested being known to man. While staring under hypnosis of Psyche, Eros injured himself with a golden arrow and instead became immediately in love with Psyche. Meanwhile, Psyche's followers were quite content to stare at her from a distance. So Psyche saw insight as to why no man wanted to be with her. Her father took counsel with the oracle, whom told her she was destined to marry a powerful being, whom even Zeus was afraid of. She had to be brought up the cliff of a mountain so that she could meet him. Her father gathered the rest of the family and escorted her to the mountain and left her there to meet him. Zephyrus, a spirit of the west wing, brought her to the magnificent palace that contained more riches than any mortal could imagine. Now it was said that Eros, this powerful being, was said to make himself as an invisible one. And in this palace, she was waited on hand and foot by invisible maidens. And this becomes the moment that they tell us that these separate entities are actually one, that are at the moment held safe in the bosom of the pineal gland. And when her father gathered the family and accompanied her to the mountain, this became the astronomical event of Venus in perihelion, at the pathway of the sun, which takes her up the hill to Aries in the form of the bow of Cupid, that forms the path in of Uranus. Here she is guided by the lamp of the Pleiadian sisters, and the razor or the knife, which some determined to be what she would use to kill him, is literally the sword or the word, which she uses as her magical spell formulation in order to see the face of Eros. It was said that Psyche, under the persuasion of her sisters, told her that she would have to get rid of this detestable beast, and it was imperative for her to take his life. And the book continues, when by the death of you we will be safe, Psyche's sisters, carried by the wind, as she hated the beast, but loved her husband, and by her audacity she changed herself to a masculine kind. But when she took the lamp, she saw the most sweetest beast and sought to hide her plans from him. She fell to her knees as she lost her strength when she saw his divine countenance with hairs of gold, drenched with ambrosia, and yield out a sweet savor. And while he slept, she took one of his golden arrows, marveling at his sharpness. She pricked herself and fell in love with him again. And while trying to embrace him, a drop of hot oil fell on the right side of the being. He then confronted Psyche as to why she would do such a thing and flew from her. Psyche, trying to cling to him, was gently let down as he left her. When he reached out of sight, Psyche threw herself in the next river. The gentle waters took pity on her and threw her on the shore. After which, she headed for her sisters, whom somehow knew she was coming. Psyche reminded her sisters of their advice and the events that played out. Heartbroken, Psyche convinced her sisters to believe that it was truly them that Eros desired. The sisters' fluttering hearts allowed them to hastily prepare to go up the mountain. Each of them cried to Eros to allow the west wing to swoop them off to the palace. One by one, leapt off in hopes that the wind would take them, but instead fell to the rocks. Meanwhile, Psyche got word that Aphrodite was looking for her. So she sought the help of Hera and Demeter, whom told her they could not betray the trust of Aphrodite. She then sought counsel with Hermes, whom told her Aphrodite sent word that there was a reward of 7 kisses of Venus's lips and 1 taste of honey from her tongue. So after speaking to Hermes the messenger, she was now convinced and made her way to the house of Venus. What will follow are the 4 labors. And after Venus laid hands on her, she was ordered to do her first task. And although young pregnant, her first labor was to sort wheat, barley, millet, peas, lentil, and poppy seeds into their own kind. Psyche, realizing she was not physically up for the task, made a psychic connection to the ants in the fields around her. They were grateful to commit to this, and before the day was done, completed their task and went back to the fields. So when Venus came home from her festivals of music, and seeing that all was completed, she ordered the second labor, which was to retrieve the golden fleece from the great monstrous sheep, shining like gold in the fullness of the blazing sun. Psyche, so terrified by the task, preferred to throw herself into the water. But then a green reed, sweet with music, charmed Psyche into saving her life, and instead gave her the secret to her task. She had to wait till the sun go down in the evening, when the earth has cooled and the sheep were more relaxed, in order to retrieve the golden fleece that clung to the foliage. And this she did, and gave the golden fleece to Venus, or Aphrodite. For the third labor, Aphrodite ordered Psyche to bring a vessel of spring water from the highest mountain. Upon reaching there, she saw a great slippery, rugged rock, gushing out fountains of water that sloped downward. And on each side of the rock, she saw great dragons, stretching their necks and singing, "Away, away, what wilt thou do? Fly, fly, unless I'll eat you." Psyche froze in fear, and Zeus, watching this, sent his eagle Aquila to assist her. The eagle fetched the water, and Psyche took it to Venus. For the fourth and final labor, Venus told Psyche she was to take a box of Persephone's beauty for Venus to use in the day at the theater of the gods. Venus warned her that she was to go through a passageway with a barley in hand, witness the layman carrying wood, and pass him silently, and do nothing. She would then come upon the dead river, where she would notice the ferryman carrying the souls over the river in his boat. journey with him, and refuse the words of the dead in the trapped areas of the water, amidst the underworld, to Pluto's palace. And when she reached upon the gates of Persephone, she must fill the three-headed dog's mouth with a sop. Her final instructions was to specifically not to open the box. And upon retrieving it, Psyche opens the box and immediately falls into a deep sleep. And because the love between herself and Eros created a bond so deep, it allowed him to sense that something was wrong. Eros came down into the underworld, put the sleep back in the box, and pricked Psyche with his golden arrow of love, which made her wake up immediately. Eros takes flight to seek counsel with Zeus for his blessings in the union with Psyche. Zeus immediately grants this and tells Aphrodite to leave them alone. He then invited Psyche for a drink of ambrosia, after which she is granted immortality and becomes goddess of the soul. Then she finally marries in the presence of the gods in Olympus and gives birth to a beautiful daughter named Hedone. So the modernized tenet of the church is to bring forth the patriarchal trinity, and this is displayed in the many stories of her grand dance as astronomical events parading in the theater of the heavens and the earth.